Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to look at the past year questions from the Innovation and Entrepreneurship section of CMAT, and this is CMAT 24 slot 2. So let's get started with the questions. So the first question says, Shadi.com, an online matchmaking service, is an example of what kind of startup model? So fairly easy question, because generally when you have all these kind of websites, they typically operate with sort of a subscription model, right? So you pay for a certain period to be active on that particular portal. Of course, once people get married, they would not have any usage of Shadi.com. So here it will be very clearly subscription based model. So that is going to be the answer for this question. Moving on to question number 2. So to maintain consistent business throughout the year, an entrepreneur may do what? Now, if you look at the options, first says do multiple businesses at a time, and that may be an option for some people, but may not be an option for all of them. Second says have more than one customer segment, that definitely looks better than the first option. Third says do guerrilla marketing and sales promotion. Now this you can do irrespective, right? Whether you want to do whatever, whether you are in a particular kind of a segment, or you have, let's say, a cyclical kind of a business or anything. This does not necessarily address the concern that is there. Fourth says do business plan. Now that's a very generic option. It has got nothing to do with what is being asked in the question. So we are between either 1 and 2, right? And because a lot of people may not be able to do multiple businesses, it becomes sensible to have multiple segments or multiple customer segments, wherein, let's say, if you know that in this particular months I'm going to cater to this segment, in some other set of months I'm going to cater to another segment. So having multiple customer segments is the way to go to ensure that you have consistent revenue or business throughout the year for any entrepreneur. So we'll go with option 2, which is the official answer for this particular question. Moving on to the next one. So slightly longer question. The question says which of the following statements are correct? And this is about Smile loans. This is a scheme from SIDBI. So you have to figure out which of these is the right option or options. So the first one says the loans are aimed to pursue growth opportunities. Now, of course, any loan when you take, you are taking it for a certain purpose, and that purpose is growing the business. It could be, let's say, to meet the working capital requirements, or it could be, let's say, to buy some capital investment decisions where you are buying something, let's say machinery or a plant and things like that. So of course, pursuing growth opportunities, this is a definite use case of taking a loan. So we definitely should have A in our answer. We can eliminate some of the options because of that. For example, I can eliminate option 3 and 4. So for these kind of questions, I recommend students to consider eliminating options, because a lot of cases you don't know the exact answer, but by elimination you will be able to figure out what the answer is. Now second says Smile loans are aimed to pay for the earlier loan. Is that a good strategy in general? No, right? So if you logically think about it, this will not be the primary purpose. So if, let's say, a government body, let's say SIDBI for example, if they're planning to start let's say any sort of a scheme which is, well, they're giving loans to entrepreneurs, they would not want it to be that particular for that particular purpose, correct? So that is why B is not a great option. We'll see what other options we have. Smile loans are available to both manufacturing and service organization. Now, if you know this already, then you know for a fact that this is correct, right? So they don't have any sort of a restriction on who is taking the loan. It can be manufacturing organizations or service organizations as well. So that is why C is definitely correct. So your answer should have C. D says Smile loans are aimed at setting up state-of-the-art manufacturing infrastructure for MSMEs. Now, because clearly these loans are for MSMEs, so this is also a correct point. So my answer should have C as well as D, and it should have A. And I can see there's only one option which is making sense because of this, which is the second option, because it says A, C and D. E says they are aimed at meeting the consumption needs of farm-based entrepreneurs. So Smile is not only for farmers or farm-based organizations, and that is why E can be anyway eliminated. Again, as you can see, we had eliminated 3 and 4, so there was no requirement also to go through option E. So the one that makes sense and the one that is the answer for this particular question is A, C and D only. I would suggest that you have a look at Smile, so you check out SIDBI as well as Smile as to what are the functions and why this particular offering is there. Let's move on to the next question. And the question says there are two statements. The first is changing competition in the marketplace is the primary reason for government involvement in business globally. So in slot 1, if you recall and if you have watched that particular video, there was a similar worded statement, right, wherein it was about the involvement of the state government. Here it is talking about changing competition, that being the primary reason. Now, is that the reason? Could be, yes, that looks good because competition is evolving every single day. Statement 2 says increase in cost of production is the primary reason for government involvement in business globally. Now this firstly is not worded correctly. I mean, I would say when you look at increase in cost of production, right, that does not require government intervention, because the company can always, let's say, outsource it from some other location or move to a place where the cost of production is on the lower side and things like that. So they don't necessarily need to have any sort of government involvement for this. And that is why even if you don't have a lot of context, you could have eliminated the second statement saying it's not a great statement. Whereas statement 1, definitely, because it's talking about competition, and we also know that that is something that for a fact has been growing. And once you have a lot of competition, for example, you have something called the Competition Commission of India, right? So because they need to intervene so that the competition does not become cutthroat, or people, for example, organizations, a lot of times they have practices that are unfair, or they have policies in terms of pricing that are unfair and things like that. So that is why you need government intervention. So A is definitely correct, whereas B, not really. So in this particular case, the answer will be option 3, which says statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. So it's not a primary reason as to why government will get involved in businesses. Moving forward to the next question, and this seems to be a direct state one-liner. Diffusion of innovation theory is associated with, and in fact we have done this as part of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship series that we have done. It's an 8-part series that we did this year. Have a look at those videos. I'm sure it's going to help you. And in that we had discussed innovation theory, the diffusion of innovation theory, which is about the innovators, the early adopters, the laggards, and so on and so forth, right? So have a look at that. But the answer for that this question is going to be E.M. Rogers. So E.M. Rogers was the person who introduced diffusion of innovation theory to talk about how innovative products get adopted in the market. So depending on who are adopting it, how quickly they're adopting it, the different kinds of people, so innovators, early adopters, and so on and so forth. Moving on to next question, becoming an entrepreneur is more about what? Again, a very, very simple question. Money, you know that it's not the answer. Commitment, maybe, but not great. Support available, definitely not. Even if you don't have a support, you can always become a great entrepreneur. Mindset is very, very important, because if you do not have the right mindset, you will not be able to achieve what you have thought for yourself, and you will not have that vision which you can translate for people who are working for you. So that is why mindset becomes an obvious answer for this particular question. Let's move on to the next one, which is match the column. So my favorite kind of questions, because these are easy to work with, you can eliminate using options and so on. So first is plant and machinery records, design thinking, technical feasibility, financial and business ideation, profit statements, creativity and innovation, and empathize. Now, if you have watched some of the videos that I have done, you know that empathize is part of design thinking, right? In fact, that is the first step of design thinking. So D1, that is what we are looking at. I can eliminate this option, I can eliminate this option. And by the way, this is precisely how I also approach it while I'm taking the test. So I always use elimination for these kind of questions. So find the one that you are absolutely certain of, start eliminating options using that. Now what I observe here is that from the remaining I have A2, right? So A is for sure 2, which is plant and machinery records, technical feasibility. Now B says profit statement. So profit related to financial feasibility. Again, this appeared in slot 1 as well, so very similar question on this. So B should be 3, so that is what we are interested in. So our answer is going to be option 2. So very simple question, you don't need to have a lot of background to answer such questions. Moving on to the next one, and we have two statements. Statement 1 says business ideation is important aspect of venture creation, obviously true. Conversation that happens in an elevator is known as an elevator pitch, and that's a very literal way of looking at it, which is completely wrong, by the way. So it's not because it happens in an elevator, you will call it an elevator pitch. The concept of elevator pitch is this, that you should be able to convey what you want to say in a very short period of time. So think of getting into, let's say, a lift with somebody who is a venture capitalist, and you have an idea. Now that maybe you're going to the 10th floor. So you have roughly, let's say, maybe 1.5, 2 minutes, and you should be able to convey your idea in that particular period. And that is why it is referred to as an elevator pitch. So it's not just because it happens in an elevator, correct? So that is not the right thing. So 2 is wrong, statement 1 is correct. So option 3 will be the answer for this particular question. Let's move on to the next question, and this is also the match the column kind of question. Let's see what we have here. So we have manager, retailer, entrepreneur and businessman. Value addition, gets the work done, works on existing business model, calculated risk taking. So even in slot 1 there was a question which was regarding entrepreneurship, calculated risk taking, etc. So C4 is certain. Okay, so that is the definite pair that you have, and you also know that manager is somebody who gets the work done. So A2 and D4, right? Those are the pairs that we are looking for. So since A is 2, I can eliminate these, and I am getting C4. So C4 is here, C3 is here, so I can eliminate this as well. So the only one remaining is option 1, and that has to be your answer. Okay. All right, let's move on, and just to discuss the remaining. So retailer is value addition, that is what is given, and D is 3. So businessman is somebody who is working on existing business model. Okay. Let's move on to the next question, and it says following are the reasons for success of entrepreneurial ventures. You have to figure out which are the ones that are correct. Effective market research. So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, would you do market research? Yes. Would you have good financial control, or would you need good financial control? Yes. Do you need good management as well? Yes. Caste of entrepreneur. Now that's the most irrelevant point here, because that has got nothing to do with whether an entrepreneur will be successful or not. So D is clearly wrong. So anything that has D, I can straight away remove it. So this can be eliminated. So I can remove all of these. So if these 3 are out, the only one that is remaining is this, which is why A, B, C, E, that's the answer that we have. So option 3 is what we will go with. Let's have a look at the next one, which talks about design thinking, and we have done it enough. Both in slot 1 also there was a question on this. Even in the series that we have done, we have discussed design thinking. So starts with empathizing, right? So you have to empathize with whoever is the user or the consumer or customer, understand what is the problem that they are facing. So you start with empathizing. So that is why I can remove these 2. Okay. Now after empathizing, what you also need to do is define the problem very, very clearly, that okay, this is what the problem is. So that is the second stage. So if you know only this much, that empathize and then define, then also you'll be able to answer this question, because answer has to be first one. You empathize with the end user, you figure out what exactly the problem is, and you define it clearly. So that is the second step. After you do that, the third step is ideate. You come up with different ideas, then you build prototype based on those ideas, and then you test it out as to what is really working or solving the problem. If that does not happen, you go back to the idea stage, work on some other idea, build a prototype and do the testing. Okay. Let's move on to the next one, which is on hands-on learning. So hands-on learning can be best taught through. Now the first one says case study analysis. So hands-on learning is what? It is essentially helping you to understand how things happen in the real world context, and or it will let you to experience that in some or the other way. So case study analysis, does that help you? For example, if you do a case study of, let's say, Maggi, right? So Maggi noodles, and because of which now you know, okay, let's say if something goes wrong with the product sentiment in the entire market, how do you come up with, let's say, a comeback strategy, right? So because of which now you have understood how to handle if it happens in real life. So case study analysis is definitely a good way of having hands-on learning. Second says entrepreneurial audit, and third is profiling. Okay, now what is audit and profiling? Let's understand the difference between the two. So in audit, what is happening is you are evaluating a business or an entrepreneur's strategies, right? So you are figuring out exactly what was the business issue, what actions were taken, how the business has performed, let's say, in the last few days or weeks or months, etc. So you are essentially auditing things that have happened in the past. Will that help you to learn entrepreneurship better? I would say yes. So hands-on learning in this as well. Then profiling. Okay, now profiling also will help you. It will help you to understand the motivation of the entrepreneur, the decisions that that particular entrepreneur took in different contexts and so on. So that also will help you in terms of hands-on learning. Now, class discussion and focus group discussion. These two are more generic in nature. These are not hands-on learning, right? For example, if I give you a topic to discuss and all of you just discuss that particular topic, will that allow you to get any sort of hands-on learning? The answer is no, right? So these are more theoretical in construct rather than ABC, which tend to be hands-on learning methodologies. So if I have to design a program with more hands-on learning, I will have to plan out ABC rather than planning out D and E. So I'm not saying that these are not good tools for learning. They are good tools for learning, but not so much for the hands-on learning. Okay, so that's the finer difference. So the official answer for this particular question is ABC, the first three methods that we looked at. Okay, fine. Let's move on to the next one. And this says, along with goal setting, major concerns for a growing enterprise. Okay, now this aspect of it, so there are some fine difference and fine nuances to the question that you have to keep in mind. It talks about growing enterprise. Okay, so the organization is already existing. First is time management. Now, think of yourself as somebody who already has a business. Would you need to manage your time well? Because it's a growing organization, there will be different priorities that you will have. So yes, time management becomes important. Second says finding, retaining and motivating able human resources. Yes, that is also going to be important. Finding new financiers. Maybe if you're going to grow, you need to have, let's say, you're going to expand to different geographies or let's say new segments and verticals. Definitely you may also need that. Diversification and export potential. Now this I cannot say for all the businesses, because export potential, unless you are, let's say, working in a business where you have that demand, you don't need to have export potential. Performance measurement and incentives. Okay, now these are closely linked with B, because if performance measurement and incentives are not there, you will not be able to have the right talent, because they might leave you and go and join some other competitor. So A, B and E, these are looking good for a growing organization. C, yes, to some extent. Now we don't have something which says A, B, C and E, which I would have gone with if, let's say, had that been there. The official answer for this question is A, B and E only. Though somebody can always argue that diversification is also important, but because it's a growing organization, they can continue to grow without diversifying also. So that is a justification that I'll have to give if I have to say that why diversification is not the answer. Because they can continue to work in that segment in which they are at this point of time. It's just that they're a growing organization. So the challenges are definitely A, B and E. That's what they will have to deal with. C and D, not so much. In some context, yes, it will be relevant, but not in all the contexts. Alright, let's move on to the next one, which says the legal term for brand is. Now, if you know a little bit about brand in general, you should be able to answer the question. Patent is different. If I have a patent, for example, if I do, let's say, some sort of an invention, I get a patent for that, right? So, for example, all the things that we use on a daily basis, say a mouse, a refrigerator, some LED lights, for example, all of these things have some patents associated with them. Second says license. It means that you are licensed to use a particular thing, right? So I'm giving a license to somebody to use my brand name, or let's say the tag that I have or the logo that I have for some particular purpose. Copyright is I have a copyrighted content. For example, I create, let's say, music, and I can have a copyright on that music that only I can, let's say, play this particular music in a particular context. In YouTube videos, for example, if we end up using copyrighted music, we get a copyright strike, correct? So that is what copyright is. Trademark is the legal term for brand, okay, because I have a trademark on something. For example, I have Nestle, right? That's the brand. So I have a trademark, that is what it is. So trademark is the legal name for brand. Very simple question. You would have also answered it using elimination method. Let's move on to the next question, which says which of the following factors are not relevant for judging the adequacy of market. Okay, now think of your, let's say, running a business or you're planning to start a business. How will you decide whether the market is adequate or not? Now first says labor market. Okay, now labor market directly is about availability of skilled labor for whatever it is that you want to do. But if let's say that is not available where you are at this point of time, you can get it outsourced, right? Or you can, let's say, ask third party to do it for you. Domestic market demand, definitely important, because if there is no demand, how will you be able to serve them, right? So that is why this is important. Export market demand will also be important, because if let's say domestic market is crowded, export market is available, you will be able to serve them. And competitors and their market share is also important, because if you think of it, let's say I want to start an automobile brand. Right now also there are a lot of automobiles that are there in the market, so there is enough competition, they have their market share. So entering into a space like that will be difficult, so I need to understand whether there is enough room for me or not. So that is why relevant to adequacy of market, this is relevant. They are asking which is not relevant, and the one that is not directly relevant is going to be the labor market. Okay, so that will be the answer for this particular question. Moving on to next one, Shruti wants to launch a small floral shop in some area. As part of her business plan, she prepared an engaging MS PowerPoint presentation to garner interest among potential investors and trigger discussion. This format of business plan is known as. So she has created a presentation and she is going to make that presentation to, let's say, people who are going to invest or be interested in investing in her business. So will that be business plan? No. She already has a business plan. Pitch deck? Yes, because she is creating a presentation. Presentation is not the answer itself. The answer is pitch deck. So there is a official term for this, which is pitch deck, which talks about what the business is all about, how she's going to start her venture and how it's going to be profitable according to her, the financial projections and things like that. So the official term for this particular thing is going to be pitch deck. The next question says entrepreneur means, and this question again has been repeated multiple times as to who is entrepreneur. Even in last year's paper, exactly the same question was asked. So entrepreneur means what? So first says to struggle, undertake, invent, motivate. The answer is to undertake. Okay, so there isn't much to explain in this particular question. There are two definitions of entrepreneur that you should know. One is somebody who is taking calculated risk, and the other is somebody who is undertaking something, right? So you're starting a venture, so you're undertaking the responsibility of that particular venture. Okay, moving on to next one. Bottom line measures of social performance for an entrepreneur include the following. So bottom line measures are what? So this, you may be hearing this thing for the very first time. Bottom line measures for a social or of social performance, right, for an entrepreneur. These are essentially the things that make a difference in the larger context. So let's say because of somebody's initiative, let's say the employment rate goes up locally, right? Now that would be something that you will term as bottom line measure of social performance. Okay. So first says unemployment rate. So this is definitely relevant. Let's say you have created a business, you have started a factory in a particular location, because of which unemployment rate has gone down. You have created employment. So that's a nice measure. Second says relative poverty. If the poverty figures go down, correct? So that is also relevant. GDP growth, not so much, because see, for a lot of entrepreneurs, making that sort of an impact would be a really long, far-fetched dream, that you're contributing significantly to the growth of the GDP. It's a very large thing to look at, and that is why this cannot be the bottom line measure. A local business may be doing wonderfully well for the community around, but they may not be doing so much for the GDP growth, right? So that can always happen. Third says average commute time. Yes, it will have an impact. For example, you have created a factory and now you have transportation service that you have created alongside, so you're impacting this as well. And the last one says illiteracy rate. Yes, again, that is also an important measure in the social context, that because of all of the things that you have done, if you look at a lot of initiatives in Jamshedpur, for example, historically the way it has been developed, you will realize that it also impacted the illiteracy rate, because they created schools, etc. there for the employees who were working with them. So 1, 2, 4 and 5, which is A, B, D and E, are relevant, whereas C not so much. So the answer for the question is option 1. Moving on to the next question, which says given below are two statements. First says dividing the market into small niches is known as targeting. Now this we have done again in another video as well, which is on STP. STP stands for segmentation, targeting and positioning. So the process of dividing the market into smaller such units is called segmentation. It is not called targeting. Targeting is when you are identifying one of the segments and then targeting them. So this should have been segmentation than targeting. So this statement 1 is definitely wrong. Segmentation and targeting. So statement 2 says segmentation and targeting are essential components of understanding the market and tapping it effectively, which is correct. So if you do the segmentation correct and if you do the targeting correct, of course you will be able to capture the market that is there. So 2 is correct, 1 is wrong. That is what the final answer will be. In option 4, it says statement 1 is false and statement 2 is true. So that's what we will go with. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Critical evaluation points of entrepreneurship development program. Okay, now this is the one where a little bit ambiguity or doubt can happen, where somebody will say, okay, this is the answer, or somebody will justify some other answer, because the way the options are worded, it's not great. The distinction is not very clear. So entrepreneurship development programs, we have seen in other videos as to what they are. They're essentially trying to build entrepreneurs by identifying them first of all, by creating training programs for them and supporting them in the initial stages, correct? First is organizational policies. So if there's an organization which is organizing some sort of a program like this, their policies, will it have an impact on, or on will that be a critical evaluation point? I would say yes. Okay, so A is fine. Suitable selection procedure of trainees and faculty, right? So one of the core things that they are doing is identifying who are the entrepreneurs suitable for this program, and then you also need to have right faculty for it. So if you are selecting entrepreneurs who are interested in building something in, let's say, FMCG, you cannot have, let's say, a trainer who has worked all his or her life in, let's say, some other industry, correct? So you need to have relevant training as well. So B is fine. So A and B are looking good, right? Third says quality of technical and vocational education and training. So the quality of training that is imparted will also be a critical factor. So C is correct. D says organizations associated in the EDP. Now this exactly what organization they're talking about is not very clear. So even unfortunately for A and D, what organization they are referring to is not clear. There is room for argument there, but B and C definitely are the right one. So you are either between A, B, C, D and A, B, C, okay? And even if somebody marks A, B, C, D, I wouldn't say that the person has gone extremely wrong. The problem is official answer says A, B, C, okay? So D, organizations associated in the EDP, they are saying they are not that important, it's not a critical factor, but somebody can always argue that that too is important, okay? But we'll have to go with whatever CMAT says, that this is the official answer for the question. So that brings us to the end of this particular video. I hope it has helped you, and we discussed all the questions from slot 2. We also have a video for slot 1 in case you haven't seen it. So have a look at that. I'm sure it will help you. Thank you so much for watching. Wish all of you all the best for your CMAT. Thank you.